So a very warm welcome to Managing Fatigue Post-Lockdown. Our presenter today is Andrea Salmon, and I'm your facilitator, Nicola Graham. So we like to start all of our programs with an acknowledgement to country. In the spirit of reconciliation, MS Limited acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So it's with great delight that I introduce our presenter today. Andrea Salmon is an occupational therapist, also with qualifications in leadership and in education and training. And Andrea has worked at multiple sclerosis for over 19 years now, so her knowledge of multiple sclerosis is extensive, and she's run our Facets program amongst many others, which is a specific fatigue management program. So a wealth of knowledge. So please do ask any questions and make the most of this opportunity to extract that information from Andrea. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Andrea. Thank you, and looking forward to today's content.
Thanks, Nicola. That's great. I started when I was in primary school working for MS. So, I'm not really all that old. So this is
Time
what we
flies.
cover. It does indeed. This is what we'll cover today. We're going to have a think about the layers of fatigue as we head out into the world post-lockdown. And we'll touch on the components of activities, the thought processes as well that might hinder us. We'll look at some tips around making changes and some of the broad fatigue management hacks, if you like, to help you make the most of your newfound freedom, but all within the limits of your fatigue. But we also want to hear from you too, so please make sure you use that question area for comments along the way as well as questions. We're all, interestingly, experiencing fatigue post-lockdown from not having spent time with people, and our social fitness is low. So we want you to be able to make active decisions about how you use your energy, active decisions about which activities in your day are the most important to you, and which ones are possibly even unlikely, or maybe you can't achieve them. You need to be in the driver's seat so that you can guide your supporters on what you feel you need to achieve, and then seek their support with the things that you perhaps feel you can't achieve. I'll give you an example of what a lot of people are experiencing and are telling us about. And this comes from a real life person living with MS. So you're so keen to spend time with family and friends that you say yes to every event on the weekend. You've spent the day at a park for a beautiful picnic. The weather was a bit warmer than you expected, and on the way home you have to stop for some supplies. But you find you nearly collapse as the heat, as the fatigue at least, hits you like a wave as you're in the supermarket. We can all learn from our mistakes, but maybe we can also be proactive so we don't have to learn from our mistakes. Let's see. Every activity that we're involved in has a physical component, a cognitive component, a social component, and an emotional component. What you have to do is work out which you find energizing and which you find depleting. If you already know that, you might want to pop it in that question area. And after I give a little example, I'll get Nicola to share your experiences with the rest of the group. But let's have a think about grocery shopping as an example of this. There's the physical components of getting to the shops, moving about in the shop, picking up the items, putting them on the checkout, packing them and getting back to the car, then getting home, and getting the things into the cupboards. There's a huge cognitive component, particularly if you're shopping without a list, thinking about what meals you have to prepare this week, who's going to be home at different times, will there be a picnic? Did you run out of pasta sauce, or is there another jar in the cupboard? There's also the emotional component. If you find the lights, the music, or the general busyness overwhelming. And then there's also a social component, even if it's simply interacting with the checkout person, or maybe you could run into people that you know and have an impromptu catch up. I'm exhausted just thinking about it. And every activity has these same components with different weightings in each area. Some activities are far more emotional than physical. Others are more physical than cognitive. But these elements are present in every activity. Nick, has anybody come up with things that they're aware of that are the depleting components of activities for them?
Nobody's popped anything in the question area yet.
Okay, that's cool. I'll get you to consider this, and it's one of the things that it's really great to reflect on, and it's certainly part of what we talk about when we do our fatigue management programs, is working out which component of different activities you find the most exhausting.
I think it's really helpful, Andrea, as well, because we don't tend to think in that depth about the energy we're expending, and you just telling us how emotional it can be going out again after lockdown is just really helpful in itself. I just noticed we have got a couple of comments come in. Jacqueline saying medical appointments are exhausting.
Absolutely, absolutely. They are. And again, there's the getting there. There's also the concern about, am I going to remember all the things I wanted to ask? Make sure you jot everything down. There's a whole lot of layers, aren't there?
Yeah, and Alison saying, I'm often too tired to drive home from social get-togethers, so I sometimes ride share or ask my hubby.
Fantastic. And hold on to that, because that'll come up shortly as well. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and Kim saying juggling and planning the appointments can be exhausting.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Cool. Keep them coming in, because we will come back to that as we go along. The other thing that we're aware of is the thinking that happens without us even being aware of it. Things like comparing ourselves to other people, comparing ourselves to our past selves, being a bit too black and white, all or none, calling ourselves names, things like I'm lazy, I'm being selfish. If you can identify some of the unhelpful thinking that goes on in your head, you can start to challenge it. And we all have unhelpful thinking. If I say no, they'll never ask me again. I should go to every family function. They'll blame me if there's a family argument, because I'm usually there to solve the problems. I'm so lazy for not wanting to go. I know they all think I'm lazy. I should be supportive. These are all things that can go through our minds without us even knowing that where they're coming from, and they happen automatically. But it's really so important. It's the key thing we've learnt during the Facets program, is to catch the unhelpful thoughts that are going with the activities that we're doing and that we're saying yes to. So let's get ourselves prepared. And this is there's a worksheet that came out with the handouts, and you might do this now as we're talking, or you might decide to do this after the program. But really, we want to, instead of finding ourselves caught up in too much activity, too tired to do the things we really want to do, we actually want to plan ahead. We even want to put pen to paper. Now, one of the things, if you haven't got that handout, but you do have a piece of paper beside you, what I'm going to get you to do is draw around your hand. So hand on the paper, draw around your hand. Then, in each finger space on your drawing, write the name of 5 most important people in your life. The people that you care for, the people that you look after. Write the names there of the 5 people that are most important in your life. So my follow-up question is your name there? It's actually quite a serious activity because it starts us off with that ability to prioritise, the things to say yes to, the things to take on board, and then the flip side, the things to decline, because you need to be there, you need to be looking after you. You know the kinds of things that bring you energy, and you know the things that are draining for you. So in this period in particular, you have to put yourself first. And you're allowed to say that Andrea told me to. So I don't mind being the blame for when you say no to something. But these are all the questions we want you to ask yourself. What do you find most draining? Or who do you find most draining? Who or what do you find most energizing? Does it work better to go out or to have people come to you? What are your limits? And then a couple of questions about the whole COVID lockdown experience. What have you enjoyed about being quieter? So what things do you hang on to? But then also identifying what have you missed the most. So what we're really talking about is thinking about making some changes. What we've found in our work is that managing fatigue is often dependent on making some changes to our routines, to our priorities, to our activities, but in a positive way that enables us to do more, not necessarily causes us to do less. We need to recognize that to make small changes makes a big difference. So it feels like a small change is not going to do much, but in actual fact, it is the small changes that we make that helps us feel like we're more in control because we can manage more and we're not having those periods of collapse or, exhaustion. The strategies that we'll talk about, they don't require big changes, but they do require change. They're these small changes that make a big difference. But we've got to acknowledge too that it is challenging even to have to make a change. Why should I have to? But it's reality, and we want to support you to make those changes. So it can be really helpful to track your daily activity. That way you will be able to identify problem areas. So for the sake of today, I've chosen to use December. What does a typical December look like? Equally, this could be what does a typical month look like, or even what does a typical week look like. I love getting people to track their activities for a week to work out, are there certain days of the week that are more fatiguing than others? And then you look at what's happening in that day and you can start to marry up what's going on. What are your most energy-consuming activities? What time of day does your fatigue set in? When do you do your shopping? When do you do housework? Do you also work out of the house or work at home if you're working at home? But what are the time things that are taking your time during the week? It's really important to think of the chunks of activity that fill your week or fill your month. Now, this example is just showing the social activities, but you'd be aware there's heaps more to consider. There's the housework time, there's the grocery time, there's other volunteer activities you might be doing, there's other family demands that aren't necessarily all on here. This is just the social demands. Then we want to get you to have a further think about the fatigue that you experience. How do you feel when you're fatigued? What rating would you give your fatigue in terms of severity, you know, on a 1 to 10 kind of scale? How does the fatigue impact you in severity? Are you aware of what triggers your fatigue? And then equally, are you aware of what helps relieve your fatigue? Are there other symptoms that occur when you are feeling fatigued? And I noticed when people registered for today's program and were asked why were they coming, for a lot of people, they mentioned fatigue, but then there was equally a mention of anxiety around post-lockdown. So both of those probably interact. It's probably not they just come together. They probably interact hugely. Today we're focusing on fatigue, but I do think they interact, and I do think one makes the other worse. So your anxiety will make your fatigue worse, but also your experience of fatigue will make you more anxious about the things that you take on. So let's have a think about what we can do to make some changes. I'm putting a lot of this back on you, but it's because you know yourself best. We can give you the suggestions, we can give you the strategies, but unless you sit and take the time to actually reflect on what's going on for you and not just put a whole blanket thing of I'm fatigued, that's too hard to manage. We want you to delve a little bit deeper into the experience of being fatigued, because it's when you kind of tease it out a little bit that you'll be able to figure out which strategies are going to be most helpful. It doesn't help us to just blanket it all together as fatigue. We've got to think about those components. We've got to think about the days. We've got to think about the things that are adding to our experience of fatigue. So let's have a think about making some changes. And this is our challenge to you, I guess. We want to challenge you to see if you can implement at least one change in the way you've been operating till now. And sometimes it can be useful to begin by choosing what is the most important activity for you to complete, and then prioritize from there. Planning ahead can be really helpful. So that might involve thinking through an activity before you begin, or it simply might be making a list of what you want to accomplish and then prioritizing that list based on what's important to you. Going back to the grocery shopping example that I used earlier, spending, up to an hour maybe planning your weekly meals and writing a shopping list separate to the shopping trip can reduce the energy required to shop enormously. And that's even before thinking of using online shopping to further reduce the energy required. And when it comes to social engagements, there's another set of questions to ask yourself. Are the people more important than the food? Is the location really important? Whose job is it to cook? What's the worst that could happen if you suggested a change or an alternative? My head at this time of year always goes to Christmas, and you know, there's things like, are there some foods that have to be included? What's the expectation around gifts? All starts to accumulate around Christmas time. And although fatigue can be a challenge, there are ways to increase your energy with a little bit of preparedness and some ingenuity. And if you need help finding the right balance, that's when you could consider seeing an occupational therapist. That extra set of eyes on a situation can help set you on the right path to managing your energy. But in general, once you've got a good understanding of your fatigue and you've begun the planning and prioritization of activities, some other things that can be really useful to consider are on this slide. Again, you might need to make changes to yourself or to an activity or to the environment where the activity takes place. Making changes to yourself is particularly important, and it really does begin with basic wellness behaviours. According to a recent published study, 85.5% of people living with MS in this study didn't meet their nutritional standards, and a whopping 90.3% were not meeting recommended dietary and physical activity standards. Good wellness behaviours include light to moderate exercise, a well-balanced diet, good sleep habits, minimal alcohol consumption, and no smoking. If spasticity is an issue, it's important to practice good management techniques, daily stretches, all steps to try and make you the healthiest that you can be. But in terms of general fatigue management strategies, we've got our wellness approaches, and then we've got things like rest breaks, exercise, the exercise, diet and sleep that we just talked about. We've got strategies around energy conservation, making tasks simpler, work simplification, and then we'll talk a little bit about communication. So we're challenging how things are done. And that is challenging because it means changing familiar routines. And if you find yourself hearing a strategy, then adding a but to your thinking, let's challenge that but. You heard me say earlier that shopping online can be a huge energy saver. But then did I hear you say, but it's not for me, but I don't know where to start, but they'll choose bruised fruit, but I like to choose my own products, but I like the best value, but I like paying for delivery. Oh no, not that I like paying, but I'll have to pay for delivery and I don't want to do that. I'll challenge all of those buts, especially if it gives you time to spend with the people who you value because you're not wiped out from the shopping trip. I think that's money and time well spent getting familiar with the online shopping system, asking a family member to help set it up with you. Perhaps buying everything except the avocados so you can make a trip to buy the avocados as you'd like them. Choosing to shop or sort the website by value rather than by cost. It's just a simple click. And even doing click and collect if you can't get free delivery. Short-term pain for long-term gain. So when you catch yourself putting a but after a recommendation or a suggestion, maybe reevaluate that but. We often put that as a barrier. Sounds like a great idea for other people, but it's not for me. Let's revisit it again. All right, let's keep moving. Unless I should go back. Nick, is there anything people want to make comments on so far?
There's been a few beautiful comments actually, Andrea. So I'll read a couple out because I think they illustrate what you've been saying really well.
Great.
Alison said, I'm embarrassed when I need a long nap a few hours after waking up. She also describes when I'm fatigued, I can't fight the urge to curl up and close my eyes. I feel as weak as a lamb. It's like someone's reached inside me and pulled my power pack, which I'm sure lots of our attendees today can relate to. And Jill comments on something as well I think lots of people will relate to, that she's been very worried about going out into crowded areas like shopping centres. So shopping online and meeting friends in homes or small coffee shops. If she has to go to the shop, she goes in the quiet time, like the early morning. So
fantastic.
I think that's lovely advice. And Alison comments that if she sleeps too long during the afternoon, it definitely creates poor sleep later that night.
Yes, that it is a balance thing happening there, and you need to play around with your rest breaks. And it's okay to have long rest breaks if you need them, but at the same time I take the point that sometimes that feels, well, it can impact your sleep at night, but it also sometimes feels like it's not the best use of the day. And I would probably say play around with your rest breaks. If you can have shorter, more frequent rest breaks, you might find that it keeps your batteries topped up without having to have the big, long time on the bed kind of rest break. So, yeah.
That's a really important point, yeah.
And I love that concept of noticing what you're anxious about. So noticing that going to a crowded restaurant or a crowded shopping centre is not what you're wanting to do. And as you know, when you're aware of that, you can make the suggestion, well, how about we just come to your place, or how about we meet at a park where it's more open, or yeah, it's great. It's all that awareness thing, isn't it? Sometimes we don't realize why we're feeling anxious or why we're feeling fatigued in a particular setting. But once we sort of do that step back and notice what's going on, we can then make proactive suggestions. Why don't we do it this way? I'd love to do that, but how about we do it at this time? Yeah, that's terrific.
Great. And just finally, Andrea, a lovely comment from Jacqueline. I've introduced a 15-minute body scan, a mindfulness exercise, into my daily routine, and it's helping me be more aware of how I'm feeling physically and emotionally.
Fabulous. Fabulous. And look, there are so many additional resources that we could direct you to, some on our website, but there's a whole lot out there. But if you have a look through the podcast library or the webinar library on the MS website, you'll find some other really useful information to tap into to add to your repertoire. And we do mindfulness programs regularly, so check them out. That's great. All right, let's move on to some strategies or some ways to make our things, and we'll start with outings, but these are some ideas, and I'd love you to add in some more as well along the way, but just some strategies to make outings a little bit easier. Consider shortening the outing. You know, we might have always done things in a certain time frame. There's nothing wrong with making it shorter. Schedule in a rest break. So again, this is a creative, you know, put a creative lens on it. Sometimes people arrive a little bit earlier for an appointment and have a rest break in the car before the thing starts. So that can apply equally to a picnic. You know, arrive 10 minutes earlier than the scheduled start time. Give yourself that time to do a mindfulness, to do a body scan before going to the activity. Or afterwards, take yourself back to the car, give yourself 15 minutes before you head off to the next thing. Tune into your body, and I love that people are doing that already. making sure you know what's going on, what you're feeling. Making use of things like cooling neckties and cooling vests. And if you don't have one, ring MS Connect and they can send you out a necktie to try, and that might then make you think, oh, a vest could be even better. Think about how you approach particularly the food preparation. I think we get caught up a lot in this, that I have to make things. There's a whole lot of ready-made options that you can tap into. And choose quieter locations. You know, you get to know around your area where the parks are that are going to be really busy, or which cafes are going to be really busy. Go for the quieter options. And I love that someone said this already, but that idea of Uber or ride sharing. So instead of you having to worry about driving, finding the location, and then the activity, and then coming home, do the ride share or the Uber. Great energy saver. When it comes to social engagements, you might find that you prefer to host the activity, but when you host, it's really hard to put a time limit on people staying. So you might actually decide, no, actually I'm better if I go out, because then I control what time I get there and what time I leave. So sometimes meeting in public is a bit of a win-win. You can arrive late if you're meeting someone somewhere, and you can leave early. And remember that idea of the calendar, choosing a date that isn't before a full day so that you can pace yourself and rest in the lead up to the activity, creating that buffer period before and after a social engagement so that you can charge and recharge. And I'll apologise that the next section is a little bit Christmassy, but December is when you're really going to have to face this challenge, and all the competing demands are going to kind of pile up. The principles apply all year really, but I think December and Christmas just accentuates all the issues. So thinking about the pros and cons, and again, this is for you to do your own little pen and paper activity, thinking about the pros and cons of various styles of events. You know, you might have quite a formal occasion. Well, the pros for that is that it's likely to be air conditioned, and there's likely to be somewhere where you can go to have a rest. However, the cons might be that you're less in control of when you can leave, and that there might be more concentrated noise and activity. And if it's a heavy meal, that probably adds to your fatigue experience. So then if you think about a picnic, the pro is definitely that it's way more casual. People can spread out, so there's less noise and perhaps fewer conversations that you have to be part of. You can kind of keep yourself out of a whole lot of different conversations. It's usually a lighter meal, so you're not getting that fatigue that comes from a heavy meal. But then the flip side, the cons, it could be really hot. You know, you're not as in control of the weather on that outing. And depending where it is, you might have to walk some distance to get there. So there are pros and cons to every scenario. And what we're encouraging you to do is to think about what works for you and put those things in place. So let's have another look at December. So here's where I'm going to say, be brave. Say no to the drinks after work. Limit your time at the picnic that's scheduled for the 4th of December. Book an Uber for the dinner that's also on that night. Move the brunch to the following weekend where it's a little bit quieter. There's a thing there about Billy having a play date. Well, find out if Billy can be collected for his play date rather than you having to drive. And dare I say, ditch the cousins, at least for this Christmas. Leave space maybe for the school and the kinder events, But plan meals in advance so that you can eat well, but still have a proper rest in the afternoon before the event. And here I say again, shop online. Look for shortcuts for the family dinner. Order barbecued chooks from the supermarket and ask for them to be cut up when you pick them up. Get everyone to bring a plate to share. That whole idea of, buying a salad, it comes in the deli tub from the supermarket, but you put it in a lovely crystal or china bowl and it looks a treat. Minimal effort for maximum effect. Say no to both your work do and your partner's work do as well. Sadly, no one might even notice that you're not there. Go to the family dinner on Christmas Eve, but leave before the carols so that you have an earlier night. And then depending on how brave you're feeling, given that you saw the family for Christmas Eve, do you really need to see them all again on Christmas Day? And make Boxing Day optional. See how you feel when the time comes. If you put all those things in place, your December will go from that to that. Way more manageable, I reckon. And really, you're seeing the most important people to you, given you've decided that, not me. This is my example. And you're being good for your body as well. So you've got lots of things on, you just don't quite have the same level of rush and packing things in. See if you can do it. I'll be interested to hear. Now, this is where I'd love you to pop things in the comment box as well, in the question area, I should call it, sorry. Perhaps you can start some new traditions. So what things have you done, or what are you considering doing that is mixing things up? We watch Christmas movies. Technically last year, when we were all in lockdown, we watched them every night. But that was a new tradition that we started. Or maybe another tradition you might do is identify a local trader that you can support and buy prepared food. We'll see if any others come in. Or Nicola, you might have a new tradition that you're starting.
Yeah, I do. I get a couple of really close friends and we have a Christmas bake together and share our produce.
Fabulous.
Some women will turn up with nothing to bake because they just actually want to be there and have a cup of tea or a glass of wine together. But it's just, and it carves out a quiet-ish afternoon all together. So that's been a new tradition for me that I've really enjoyed.
Yep. We're also biting the bullet this year, and it won't be forever, I don't think, but for this year in particular, we're not giving gifts in our immediate family. We've decided we all have to come up with something that we're going to do during the year together. So no one really needs anything. So for this year, it's going to be more about activities together rather than gifts. So that has straight away eased the whole shopping thing for me. It's wonderful.
Yeah. That's lovely. Time spent together is invaluable, isn't it? We've got some lovely ideas coming up. Alison saying thank you for the awesome ideas. Natalia saying having Christmas at Mum's. So we'll be cooking one meat option and all cold foods, and she'll be doing the cleanup. Fantastic result.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Yeah. And Kim saying, love the rest breaks in between tasks or outings. And she's using click and collect, and she goes and gets a cuppa instead of doing the shopping, and then she feels like she's done something pleasurable for herself.
That's great. Love to hear that. Yep. I'm not going back. I'm a total convert to click and collect. That's terrific. All right. A big part of making any of these changes, though, is communicating. So if you can, you need to let others know by communicating your needs. But really, it's only if they need to know. And with so many conflicting demands at the moment, when everyone's wanting to catch up, and even as we have been thinking towards Christmas, it's okay to say no to some things without a reason. People expect it. People don't expect everyone to be able to do everything. And just because you can get together doesn't mean you have to. But when you can't just say no and they need to understand what's going on, that's when you might use something like that spoon theory story. So I'm sure people have got ways that they can communicate about their fatigue. And if you're not aware of the spoon theory, you can Google it and find the spoon theory. It wasn't specifically around MS, but it applies really well. So be prepared to say no to a few things. I'll give you an example. A lady that I worked with a couple of years ago always felt that she was obliged to join in the parent conversation when she dropped her daughter at dance, I think it was. And she decided she wasn't going to always go in. Sometimes she would just drop her daughter. And what she learnt was that they didn't even notice. They liked seeing her when they saw her, but no one was worried if she didn't come every time. So, you know, sometimes it's okay just to say no. So I know this is one of Nicola's favourite strategies. What are you going to ditch, delegate, or delay? This is another great fatigue management approach, and we've listed some things already that you might have thought about, but if there's other things that you straight away kind of start to think, oh, okay, yeah, I could delegate that one, or I could ditch that one completely, or I could delay that one. So in the ditch column, and again, this is very individual because I am a Christmas card person, so I'm not going to ditch that, and no one else does it. But that's my choice. So I want these to be your choices of where you spend your energy. Are you going to ditch sending Christmas cards? Are you going to ditch making the Christmas cake? Are you going to ditch going to the shops and battling with the car park? Are you going to ditch making all the salads from scratch? Maybe completely ditch driving in December. You could delegate the present shopping. You could even delegate it by doing it online. That's a form of delegation. You could delegate the baking to someone else. And that idea of a Kris Kringle where you don't have to buy presents for everyone, it narrows it to just a couple of people. And maybe you could delay some gatherings to the new year. Maybe you could delay when you head off on holidays. I can't believe the number of years that we used to head off camping on Boxing Day. I don't know how we did it, but delay it a little bit so you've just got that buffer to get over Christmas. What are your ideas? We'd love to get you to pop them in the comment area. And if you can come up with anything straight away off the top of your head, that's fantastic. But it might be that you want to have a think about it.
So some lovely ideas, Andrea, coming in from people. So Jill's saying that if I'm hosting, I ask people to bring a dish.
Fabulous.
That's definitely something that I do. Natalia's saying delegated care of 4-month-old to grandparents during Christmas.
Wonderful. And they're not going to say no to that at all. It is a win-win.
Kim saying ditch cooking and Christmas groceries, have ordered ahead, so no work.
Fabulous.
Good on you, Kim. You are a legend.
Fabulous.
Yep, and that's the main points that we've got coming in at the moment.
That's great. Keep comments coming. Look, it's not easy. This is our final wrap up. It's not easy, but we so want to congratulate you for being willing to listen, to consider, and even more to take on some changes. Bugger this MS for getting in the way, and even more for the lockdown that's made us less able to do everything that we could before. We have to be gentle on ourselves, so please be gentle on yourself. Look for the things that bring you those jolts of joy. They're the things that are important, and practice gratitude for all the wonderful things that you're doing, the steps you've already taken, the changes you've taken on board, and for the things that you will take on board. There's a lot to it, and I love that you're coming to it again, because it is the sort of thing that you want to revisit and think about, what's going on for me now? Why is it different now? What can I put in place? That's absolutely wonderful. So, are there any further questions or comments that have come in, Nicola?
Yes, let me just have a look. There was a comment in particular that I would like to share. So Alison said, I'm thinking of getting a walker, even though I'm still in my 50s, just to use when I'm at a shopping centre so I can sit down every now and again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Interesting. I'll just pick up, there's an automatic thought going on there that you're too young to have a walker. But spin that on its head, the walker will mean that you can carry shopping in the basket. It will mean that people will give you a bit more space because they'll see that you've got a walker, and that will identify for them that your balance might be off or whatever. Don't see it as a negative. See it for the positives that will bring you. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. And Jill's made a couple of great comments. She said she's not worried to tell her friends her needs, like air conditioning.
Right.
And she tries not to sleep during the day. She feels worse, but she does rest, but not sleep.
Fabulous. Yeah, that's great. And making the most of those rest breaks. So that was where the suggestion of the body scan or a relaxation technique, downloading some apps on your phone so that you could even listen to a relaxation technique, or someone, guide you through a beautiful place that helps you relax. That can really help you recharge your batteries. Probably more so than if you just sit and do a Sudoku or have a cuppa. You're still concentrating, but if you can have that real rest break, that's fantastic.
And a couple of very affirming comments about the walker, encouraging Alison. So Jill said, walker's a great idea. Too many shopping centres don't have places for people to sit. And then Alison has responded with, the walker will also mean I can go to see live bands without needing to stand all night, I hope. So that's fantastic, Alison. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's all the comments and feedback we've got at the moment, Andrea.
That's fine. That's lovely. Thanks for being part of the program.
So thank you very much, Andrea, for sharing all your wisdom and insights, and lots of great information there from you running the Facets program. Our attendees are sending in their thank yous. So thank you from Natalia and from Alison. Thank you, Andrea, for your wise counsel. So really appreciated, Andrea. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to run through, just to close, some housekeeping slides. I just want to check again. I've had and Jill saying thank you, and Jackie saying thank you, etc., and Teresa saying thank you. So and Rena, etc. So it continues in that vein. So, but very briefly, just want to finish off, just a gentle reminder of the many services that we have available to you, so you're not facing MS alone. We have the NDIS, we've got plan and support coordination, lots of different allied health services for you in the NDIS space. We've got our wonderful MS Connect service where you can speak to a nurse advisor, an MS specialist, a social worker, employment support, wellbeing support, and the wonderful peer support service if you'd like to connect in with somebody in a similar situation to yourself who's navigating it well. Obviously education, respite, residential care. So lots of services there for you. And we've got lots of resources, including podcasts, the In Touch e-newsletter, fantastic and extensive webinar library on a huge range of subjects for you, and some interactive and personalised tools, etc. So plenty of resources there on a multitude of topics. So please get in touch with us if we can help you in any way. Our gateway number is MS Connect on 1800 042 138. Don't hesitate to call us. And thank you. Thanks for your time today, everyone. Hope it's been really useful. And once again, a heartfelt thank you to Andrea Salmon for presenting the webinar today. Thanks, Andrea.
No worries, my pleasure. Stay on the line, everyone, too, because there'll be a little survey that comes up and you can give us any other suggestions of topics that would be of interest to you. That's really helpful as well. Thanks, Nicola.
Pleasure. And just in the question area, Andrea, lots of thank yous and appreciation for your expertise. So I hope you get a chance to read that. Thanks, everybody. We'll close the webinar now. Pleasure, Andrea. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.